All righty, we're gonna begin. Got a number of people that aren't here yet, but joining us, so maybe they will be. We don't know. So, but I'm gonna cover me in. There, Susan.
Here we are. Linda's coming.
Linda's coming. Oh, that's right, Linda.
Just ringing our chimes.
There's only one now.
1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. If they all had the same time signature, it wouldn't be as. For me, when you change time signatures, that's what throws me sometimes. Because I have to count it now.
She's making a face too.
Just that. Why? Then I was so thirsty and I didn't even have time to get a drink.
No. Do you know if we streamed it this morning?
Yeah, no, we didn't.
Okay.
Something happened. It didn't get turned on for some reason.
Jim had tried to find it.
Yeah, I don't know. It had to do with Mike was not back there, and so Josh was trying to do both of them, and I think he just forgot.
Fully understand.
He just forgot. Yeah.
Okay, I found
The Tuesday morning.
Oh,
I don't do that one.
That's why I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I don't do that one.
Okay.
It's one of those that that one's a little. I mean, it's more the little old ladies, and I don't think that they would be comfortable.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Ooh, you stepped in it.
I know.
I'm not coming anymore.
Oh, please.
Think about that. It's okay. Little lady. I've been called a golden girl.
LOL.
Little old lady.
That's LOL. Little
It's
lady.
too late now. You stuck your foot in it. It's too late now.
You all are all wound up from bell practice. I need to watch myself.
Yeah, we probably are. He's a dangerous territory.
I actually, Abel, one of the things I did, I tried to do it like 2 times, and I couldn't get it to turn on. And so I just gave up. But I also decided I felt like it wouldn't work very well for some reason. So I don't know. And yes, I stick my foot in it. So in my mouth, I have hoof and mouth disease. Hoof and mouth. Okay. All right. So we are talking about Revelation, and we are this time we may get into and still read some, but we're going to kind of go back and talk about the different meanings of some of this stuff, because we are at the point where we've done the first 6 of the seals. You guys, so you guys, okay.
No, I missed last week too.
You said you weren't here.
Yeah, okay. So it was parts of the seals. So, but it's one of those, I wanted to wait and get a kind of a chunk of it done, and then talk about what does it mean? What do those horsemen represent? What is it? Those kinds of things. So I went online and looked, and yes, I will admit that a lot of, which is not the best thing. I've found it other places too, and the idea with it's like going to the encyclopedia. It's kind of easy. It's all there together, but I will add some other stuff to it. But there are, in terms of interpreting the different seals and all of the book of Revelation, all of the book of Revelation, actually, there's a number of different views. Okay, the first one is what are called preterist, preterist, and that's the view that John, when John was on the island of Patmos, he was given a vision, and these were a course of events that were going to happen over the next few centuries. So from the time he's there, like for the next few hundred years. One of the reasons that are kind of the way they date that, the people that hold this idea, is that it runs from when the visions happen until basically when Constantine recognizes the church and the church becomes an accepted into the whatever. And so at that point, then everything, according to this view, is not talking about now. It's not talking about in the future. It's stuff that happened between 9 already done, right? And there's a lot of people that have that view. And I'm not gonna ever talk about the different names because we don't care about who it is that has what view. But we'll talk about different how that would be interpreted by someone from that view. So preterists are the ones that think it already happened. It happened within like the first 300 years. Then there's what are called historic, as that the apocalypse spans the time period from John of Patmos to early Christendom. So they don't even see it as going as long as the others do, the historists. Some of them do. Some of them don't limit it to the 4th century. Some of them are the others. Some have viewed the opening of the seals right into the early modern period. But they don't. For them, it's not. They don't really see it as a all the way to the end of time kind of thing. It's more historical. But I'm not sure exactly how well, we'll see, because we'll talk about each of the seals and how each of these people view it. But let's see what is dated to John's own time, so that some of these people think that it all happened within John's lifetime, that either that or very shortly afterwards, so that it's not even as long as the 300. Some of them view it a little bit longer, but let's see. On this one, it said there's this one guy that says that the first seal, as revealed to John by the angel, was to signify what was to happen soon after John seeing the vision in Patmos. The general subject of the first 6 seals is the decline and fall after a previous prosperous era of the empire of heathen Rome. So that they see all of it as kind of happening within the Roman Empire. It all relates to the Roman Empire. All right. So then I'm going to come back to that one. There is what's called the idealist view. The idealists think that this doesn't have anything at all really to do with history. It's all idealist. It's all abstract. It all stands for something else that doesn't relate to anything necessarily, not specific. Let's see. Where isn't there? I think there's a rapture. 14. And the good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed about the world as testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So that's the end time. But I thought there's one where, so when you see the desolating sacrilege standing in the holy place, then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. The one on the housetop must not go down or to take what is in the house. For at that time there will be great suffering, such as not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no one would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then, if anyone says to you, "Look, here's the Messiah," or "There he is," do not believe it. Where's the one about something? 30. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. The tribes of earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. He will send. There's one where I thought there was one where the one person will be there and one will be left. Isn't that? Or is it, okay. 2 men will, Then 2 will be in the field. 1 will be taken and 1 will be left. 2 women will be grinding meal together. 1 will be taken and 1 will be left. Okay, so that's the rapture belief that there will come a time So it's all wrapped up in the second coming of Jesus. There will be a rapture that saints are taken. They disappear. Futuristic believe that all of this stuff happens after the rapture, and so I think that the way we talk about that is that all of this stuff that we've been reading, all the seals, that the rapture happens before the tribulation, and then there's some that are post-tribulation, and they believe the rapture happens post-tribulation. Okay, you had Thessalonians, what 4:16. What does it say? What does 16 say?
For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a commanding shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God. First, the believers still alive and remain on the earth will be caught up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Then we will be with the Lord forever. So encourage each other with these words.
Okay, and so that's the rapture, right? And so these the mostly futuristic see this the rapture is happening first, and then all of this bad stuff happening. The other group of futuristic are the moderate futuristic. So you've got the mostly and the moderate. I didn't make up these names, okay? And this is according to the Bible.org or Bible.org, which is, I mean, a reputable. An answer to the problem of the relationship of the seal, trumpet, and bowl judgments to one another could provide the solution to the view of history affirmed in the book. This guy proposes that the seal judgments represent the forces in history, however long it lasts, by which God works. John is seeing history from the heavenly perspective, not necessarily the future. That's one of them. Talk about it being Rome's golden age, so that the white horse and the rider on the white horse is Rome, and it lasts. It's while Rome is, and Rome's golden age goes out 249. I believe that's talking about from the time 240. That's Rome. Okay. The what gospel? Remember, they're not saying that it's relates. They're very symbolic. Okay. And then the future, and I only have really one set of futurists. I don't have both in Wikipedia, so I don't know what both say on everything. But one says that the church. So he's kind of Wikipedia pressed them together, but being that the raptures have white horse. Makes sense. I mean, you understand that. Who's the Antichrist? Who knows? Okay, they're and whether or not there is an Antichrist or there are multiple. I mean, if you read Paul talks about Antichrist quite often, and it's anybody that basically is counter to Christ or that kind of thing. And so it's not. That's a little different than this. This is the Antichrist, right? The Antichrist. But the idea that you'll have the rapture of the church, and then you have the coming of the Antichrist, and so then that's the beginning of the tribulation. Is what the futurist in this case, and I'm having to combine the two of them. Okay, so the second seal, then, right? The second seal is the rider in red, right? The horse, and people would kill one another, and insurrects. I don't know who that is, but the great during the great there was again in the history that would have been going on. If John is writing in 90, Rome was destroyed in 70. Because there are certain 17th and 18th century scholars that say that the red horse represented the assassins and robbers of Judea at the certain time, and there were a lot of that's where one of the reasons that Rome invades is because there's so much bloodshed going on in Israel. And so for their view, the second one is about something happening in Israel. Okay, not in the future. There's a period in the Roman Empire when the Roman politics goes nuts, kind of like in the world today, only different. They go nuts in that an emperor gets named and give it a month and he's assassinated. And I mean, they go through 32 emperors in a very short period of time. Yeah, you didn't want to be. I mean, I think they were at that point. They were having to draft people to be emperor because nobody wanted to be emperor because it was violent. And so that's one of the things that the rider in red represents that period in the Roman Republic. So it's in the future of Rome, right? And then it's about a 240. It's like from in the ones and 200s. Anyway, so that's there is another one, ODUS, and then others refer it to Mohammedanism, which is like the early rise of Islam. So that it could be, because you could look at history, like just think. Look anywhere from 90 AD to 500, and see anything you want. I mean, that's if you see it that way, that's what it could refer to. We don't know, and that's kind of how historicists do it. Is they find something they think that it relates to. Idealists say the seal judgment 2 through 4 represent the disintegration of human civilization and creation resulting from their rejection of the Lamb of God. The rider on the red horse represents the slaughter and war that the kingdoms of men from 90 AD to now. It's just the rider in red is roaming around, is roaming around bringing bloodshed because we've not accepted Christ, right? That's the that the Antichrist, who is the first horseman, will unleash World War III and crush anyone who claims to be Christian after the rapture. He allies with the Arab world in an effort to conquer the entire world. And references were made there to Ezekiel 38 and Daniel 11. Only Jerusalem will stand in his way to world supremacy. And so that's that. So the futurist is the Tim LaHaye, Jerry Jenkins, Left Behind. Some of these things, when we get to some of the other the trumpets and the bowls and things, and how you interpret some of those will come out. Some of like the idea of this red and all this bloodshed and stuff are played out in more detail later on. So that it's not the war had the second seal, right? The third seal is the black horse. This is the one where you get the balance and the measure of wheat and the measures of barley. And I did read, I read somewhere that really, how you got one, you get one measure of wheat for a denarius, a measure. Normally you should get 8 to 10. So that tells you how much wheat, how much grain was costing. The preterists view it as corresponding to a famine that occurred. Pointed there. There's some other ones that pinpoint the start of the famine at year 44, which kept repeating right into the first Jewish-Roman War of 66. Some see year 68 as the most significant year of the famine. It was so severe that mothers ate their children to survive. While Jewish revolt leaders consumed the oil and wine that were luxury items from the Jerusalem temple. So they say that this horse, the horse of that's famine, was a famine that already happened, right? Historicists associate this with taxation from the emperor. Taxes could be paid in grain, oil, and wine. The time of Septimus Severus, 193, to Alexander Severus, 235. Others talk about it as another time of great taxation in year 212. There are some, though, that say that the opening of the third seal relates to what's called the Byzantine papacy in year 606, following Pope Boniface III as an Easterner on the papal throne in 607. So for some reason, this guy decides that it has to do, so these different scholars look at it, and it's all according to what they see. But the idea that Rome, that it's referring to, not we're so heavily taxing the whole world that people were starving, not because there wasn't grain or there wasn't other things to eat, but because it was all being taken for taxation, which is even a scarier thought. Well, it's not scarier than eating your children, but it's because that's a pretty gross thought. That's a pretty gross thought. Okay. You could go from World War I, and then you would get World War II, and then you get Stalin and some of the stuff Stalin did, that he supposedly killed as many of his own people he killed millions of Russians. You get Pol Pot in the Khmer Rouge, the killing fields. The whole of the 20th century, the pale horse rode on the earth, and we don't put it in that kind of language, but you could see it that way, because man, there was it was a really, very much of it. We turn a blind eye, there is huge amount of whoever it is with the Saudis that have invaded Yemen, all the people that die. There's a lot of places where there's still a lot of death, a lot of wars and stuff going on, and it doesn't make the news anymore. We don't see much of it.
North Korea is another one.
Well, yeah, especially famine. That's one of those where that's famine caused by their own. That brought on by their own ruler that won't let people help. It's not because there isn't enough food. All he would have had to do is say, "Hey, I need some help," and South Korea would provide all the food that they need. But he won't do that, and so you wind up with that kind of death. There's been in China during the Cultural Revolution, which would have happened post World War II. There were millions that died. All of the 20th century, but it continues today. Okay, so and the idea, in some ways I like the idea that these are things that these four seal things that happen. And they continue to happen. They're a result of the fact that we have failed to follow the teachings of Christ. We failed to accept Christ, because even Christians are responsible for some of these things. I'm not saying every one of them, but we're responsible for some of them, and sadly enough, but then you have others that are not Christian, that have caused them.
The Crusades were
absolutely
pretty bad.
Yeah, they were bad.
Or those were done in the name of religion.
Well, and the whole the idea of the white horse riding in conquest. Well, the church was right there with the government when they sailed across the ocean and landed in the New World. Right, and so you get the Spanish conquistadors and the church, and they will kill Native Americans or natives who won't accept. But worse than that, far worse than that, is the fact that they bring smallpox and all kinds of stuff that this world has never seen, and they will decimate the population. That's one of those. I saw a thing about something on Facebook talking about how we don't talk about what has happened to Native Americans as a genocide, but they talk about the population numbers and where they were at the height and where they are now, and that really it hasn't been one of those where people went at they were intentionally, always intentionally going and trying to kill them, but it's resulted in almost the complete obliteration of Native Americans, that of the numbers. So yeah, it could be, it can be the church. It can be. And it can be times, even when we're trying to do something good, sometimes we can, we can cause problems. Okay, so the fifth seal, if you remember, is these are the martyrs, those that were slain for their testimony, and they cry out for judgment and vengeance on those that persecuted them, and they're wearing their white robes. And they're going to rest. They're told that they have to rest for a little season until their fellow servants, also that should be killed as they were, should be fulfilled. So until you get to the final, the death of the final martyr, they have to just chill out, right? Well, that's what it is. I mean, he says, "Hey, chill out, okay? Well, it'll happen. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. It'll happen, but just you got to wait until the last one dies, and then we'll take care of it." The preterist says it's a cry for vindication by Christian martyrs who were persecuted by the Jews after Christ's death and leading up to the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Okay, so that at that point it's those persecuted and killed by the Jews. So that would be like Stephen, who was stoned by the Jews, the first martyr, right? So that's a very limited idea of what it involves, right? Hang on. This goes on and says, for some of them, the year 64 is a significant year. The name Jerusalem became synonymous with the persecution of the righteous. But God avenged the death of the righteous by allowing Rome to conquer the holy city as retaliation for the Jews handing Jesus over to Pilate. So that they would see that actually they had been vindicated, right? That he told them to chill out for a little while. So what he's seeing is what happened sometime before 70 AD, but then they chill out, and then the Romans come and destroy Jerusalem, and then they're vindicated. So that it's Jews. The historicists say that the seal occurred during the rule of martyred Christians who were persecuted by Diocletian. That's 284 to 303. This was the 10th period of the persecution of Christianity and the most severe because of being on a worldwide, quote unquote, scale. It's probably not really worldwide because we weren't all over the world. Then with Constantine's rise to power, Christianity became legalized and the church was therefore vindicated. So it's said in the future, but not too far in the future, having to do with Diocletian and then Constantine, right? And the fact that they had to chill out for a little while, and then now the church has been made legitimized. It's never made the official Church of Rome. I mean, there's some people that say that, but it isn't. But it's made it's allowed to be a religion, and constant. It's one of those that that whole idea of people giving their lives to Christ. This is the idea of you're Constantine's soldier. He says, kneel down and repeat after me, and you do it or you die. I don't know that that's a real conversion. That doesn't really function for me, but that's kind of how it worked. But Constantine's wife she was devout, and she went to those sites, whether they're really the site or not. She went in and started a lot of that kind of stuff because she was a real devout Christian. Okay, the idealists say the fifth seal is a reminder that though the Christ inaugurated the kingdom of God through the preaching of the gospel, God's people suffer during the tribulation that starts from the first coming of Christ to the second coming of Christ. Okay, so so the idealists aren't going to buy the idea of a rapture before the tribulation, at least. That Christians are going to be or suffer and be martyred from the time Christ dies until Christ comes back again, right? This is known as the end time tribulation that stretches across world history. Thus, the kingdom of God is in history, but not yet triumphant. Okay, and that's one of the things that we when we're dealing with people that are going to be pastors, the idea that the kingdom of God is not just heavenly at the end of time, but it's also at work in the world today. So it's both now and in the future. And in this case, the idea that it includes the suffering of Christians, because we don't see it much in our world. I mean, I think there are some Christian groups that really play up and want us to want people to feel sorry for them because they're not allowed to do something that they want to do that's bizarre or whatever. But we really, in America, we're not persecuted. I mean, let's face it, we're in good shape. But in other places, it's bad. I mean, it's really bad. And sadly enough, we don't even pay a lot of attention to it. Sometimes the way that we should. We should be more aware. The thing of the guy that was released from, was he in Turkey? Yeah, from Turkey. He was a preacher, and I don't remember the details. Why was he in prison? Do you know?
I don't know.
Because he'd been convicted and was going to be. I mean, he was supposed to serve like a 15-year.
Leading a revolution.
Okay, something along those lines. So, yeah. So, okay. The futurists say this judgment encompasses Christians who will be martyred for their faith in Christ during the Great Tribulation by not bowing down to the Antichrist and by not submitting to the global economic system that forces all people on earth to receive the mark of the beast. We all know what the mark of the beast is, right? 666, right? The number stamped on your forehead, whatever.
I put that on my
Back of the neck.
Back of the neck, is that what it is? There was a young lady at Walmart that was very pregnant. I don't know if you ever saw her when you were in there. She checked out where the tobacco and stuff was. And so if she was there, I would go over because I talked to her and I asked her when she was due, and she had a few weeks left. And so every time I'd go in, I'd talk to her, and I mean, she was getting closer and closer and closer. And finally I went in one day and she wasn't there. And I went to that thing and talked to the guy. And I said, well, has she had her baby yet? And he said, well, she came to work this morning and then she went into labor.
Oh.
And they've taken her, they took her to the hospital and all. And it was a few days later, I went back in and talked to him again, and she had the baby. I kidded with the guy that the baby came out and he had a barcode on his butt, because had to scan him. That to me, that's maybe that's the mark of the beast. It's not actually numbers; it's a barcode. But that idea that in this case, these martyrs are not martyrs of the past, right? All the other ones see them basic. Well, I guess the idealists see them as current ones, but the preterists and the historicists see them as martyrs that happened in the early church history. The futurists see them as that after the rapture, there will then be Christians, because there are people left behind that are maybe nominally Christian, I guess, but they go all in, if you will, and become actual Christians, and and proclaim the gospel, and they refuse to give in to all the things going on, and as a result, they're martyred. And so these are martyrs that happen between the rapture and the second coming, right? Which I can understand that. I mean, that to me, it fits in. I understand how that fits into their worldview, right? So you see that the whole Left Behind series, that is a futurist worldview, but that's not the only worldview. There are others. Now, the sixth seal. The sixth seal is the one that's all the funky weird stuff happens, right? The earthquakes, the moon becomes blood, stars in the heavens fall to the earth, the heavens roll up like a scroll. It's like somebody pulled the blind and it rolled up. Mountains and islands are moved out of their place, and everyone on earth, including kings and great men, rich men, captains, plus the lowly bondsmen and freemen, hide in the dens and in the rocks, and they want the mountains and the rocks to fall upon them, just to save them from the wrath of the Lamb, right? So that is so the preterists, how would they view that sixth seal, all of this stuff? They say that it relates to the events during the siege of Jerusalem by Titus in year 70. So for them, that is all about that one event, the siege and the fall of Jerusalem, the destruction of Jerusalem.
Well, earthquakes really do happen over there a lot.
Yes.
And
But
stars fall from the sky.
Oh yeah. This says preterists typically view the symbolic language, because the language we talked about, that the language in this sounds very similar to the language in Joel, right? That is in Acts 2, and other language that the symbolic language is taken from the Old Testament, and alludes to environmental disturbances that fell upon Jerusalem before its fall. The mention of hiding in caves alludes to many Jews who hid in caves and underground when the Romans finally invaded. So that it's referring to how people really did respond to some of that. Okay, so they saw it. So the preterists see it as John has this vision, and in the vision, John is shown sort of the heavenly realm of what happened 20 years ago, because all of this has already happened. All the seals, according to the preterists, all the seals had happened already in John's lifetime, and so he's simply getting a different view of it, of that. Let's see. Go ahead.
Before he was having this dream,
Mm-hmm.
Did he know all these things happened?
Yeah, he would have been aware. He would have been aware of all of the. He may have been. No, I think that the Christians had. Well, no, there would have been Christians in Jerusalem when Jerusalem fell. He may have been in Jerusalem. So I mean, he would. I feel quite certain he would have been aware of what was going, of all these things that were going on. So he would have known of them. And part of the preterist view, something that I didn't mention that I should have, is that the scholars that accept this think that it's done this way because it was in the Roman Empire. You couldn't write things that criticized the Roman Empire, so it's all written symbolically to kind of tell about why things happen without criticizing the Roman Empire. Because if you wrote it and criticized the Roman Empire, you'd be in trouble. And so this was written in such a way that you got it and read it, and you couldn't say that it was for sure Roman Empire, right? Okay, we are at 7 o'clock, so we're going to stop right there, and we'll pick up, and I'll talk about the other ones of those, and then we'll start from there and go forward into the seventh seal after we do.
Well, for some reason, I'm really hoping it was things that happened way back then, because